Hey again, everyone. We're back. Well, actually, I'm still at my parents' house. Traveling right now is a little bit more complicated, as I'm sure you all know. But by the time you see this video, I should be on my way home and back to the Subjectively studio. I didn't want to start off 2021 too slowly though, so even though I don't have full access to all my recording and editing software, I'm going to be sharing with you guys some new Pokemon armors from my most recent set of private commissions. For those of you who don't know, these pieces, which I've been creating for almost 2 years now, are a series of outfits, armors, and generally anthropomorphized Pokemon-inspired characters that I make for independent clients through Instagram. They're a lot of fun, and because I've been doing them for so long, I can actually use them to gauge what about my art has changed and/or improved over the years. If you're not following me on Instagram, you might notice that these pieces look somewhat different from the ones that I've done in the past. I go into more detail about this in the last Pokemon armor video I uploaded. If you're already caught up though, let's not waste any more time. I'm going to be showing you my process that I used to create each of these pieces and giving commentary relating thereto, starting with one of my favorite pieces that I did in all of 2020. The person who commissioned this design actually had already hired me to do a couple of other armor sets. They're creating a party of D&D characters based off of different Pokemon, and it's been a lot of fun bringing their ideas to life. The first armor we're talking about here was based off of MEGANIUM. Now, MEGANIUM, while super cute, is also a very simple Pokemon design. It's kind of just a toy dinosaur with a flower around its neck. And while there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, it poses an interesting challenge for me. Taking a complicated design and boiling it down to its most basic essence is somewhat easier than using what few features a simple design like MEGANIUM has and elaborating them into something more intricate. I personally prefer very busy designs, lots of overlapping plates, ornate weaponry, and layers of fabric mixed in with the hard armor. Taking a Pokemon like MEGANIUM, who has very little going on in its design, and using that inspiration to create an armor set for a human body was going to be difficult. Starting with anatomy, I wanted this character to be tall but bulky, like the Pokemon itself. Unlike my older armor sets, I was taking some artistic liberties with this body, elongating the torso and neck and diminishing the size of the legs. Stylizing a character like this can add a lot more personality to it, but it takes a good understanding of actual anatomy in order to tweak a body like this without making it look strange. With this somewhat unnatural build, I could create a design that would play into such a long, truncated sort of look. The client specifically requested that this character be a cleric. Clerics in D&D are something in between knights and mages, devout followers of a specific fictional deity who channel their magic powers through their sense of faith. Strictly speaking, any class in D&D can pretty much look however you want them to, but the most recognizable cleric loadout usually includes a suit of armor, a set of robes or hood, and something to channel their magic power. This can be pretty much anything, but I went with a smallish sword and a medium-sized shield. This was mostly a nod to MEGANIUM's somewhat underwhelming and balanced stats. I elaborated the Pokemon's neck flower into a large, floral mane, and outfitted the character with a mask that I would eventually modify to cover half of her face. I also included a set of long, thin antennae. The rest of the armor would be more or less smoothed or polished, with elaborate trims that overlapped and intertwined like vines. I gave her 2 sets of overlapping robes, one made out of cloth material and one mimicking the floral mane. To give the whole design a more anchored feel, I added 2 long trails of fabric that would attach in the back of the chest piece and reach down to the ground. MEGANIUM's color scheme is simple but iconic. I had to spread the colors around a bit, but I saved the most saturated and brightest colors to distinguish key aspects of the design like the face. I also spent some time going over the line work with color overlays in order to give a more satisfying sense of shape and silhouette. This next armor set was commissioned by the same client who commissioned MEGANIUM, and was designed to be part of the D&D party. It also ended up not really being armor, but we'll get to that in a bit. The client wanted a WIGGLYTUFF inspired character as a D&D bard. Makes sense, right? Bards in D&D are pretty much just that, characters that prefer to use wit and charm to overcome their obstacles as opposed to brute force. They often carry some sort of instrument that can double as a weapon, but seeing as this is WIGGLYTUFF, it made the most sense to me that her instrument of choice would be her voice. WIGGLYTUFF is a rather plump, bottom-heavy character, so I wanted the anatomy of this design to be the same. As a charismatic performer, I wanted her pose to be dynamic and overflowing with showy confidence, belting out a beautiful note at the top of her lungs. I couldn't wait to turn the iconic swirl of fur on top of WIGGLYTUFF's head into the most elaborate hairspray-induced do-up. Instead of interpreting the Pokemon's ears as some sort of headpiece, I made them into two decorative feather shoulder adornments that could retain the silhouette of the original Pokemon without turning the character into a furry. Not that there's anything wrong with a furry character, it's just not what I wanted for this design. Overall, WIGGLYTUFF is bulky, but no part of it is sharp or jagged. It didn't feel appropriate for the character to wear any actual armor, so go ahead and tell me in the comments that these aren't technically Pokemon armors, because, I mean, you're right. Like MEGANIUM, and a lot of early Pokemon designs, WIGGLYTUFF really only has 3 colors making up its entire palette, so I had to improvise a bit. I love working with pinks though, there's so much variety, and a blue pink is so much more different from a red pink, both visually and tonally. The last piece we'll talk about in this video wasn't specifically commissioned to be a D&D character, but the client did request that the design take inspiration from things like druids and sages. They had asked for a shiny Whimsicott armor, which you would think wouldn't look too different from an armor based off of Whimsicott's standard form. However, I felt like shiny Whimsicott gives off a very different vibe. The dark brown body and saturated blue horns makes it have almost an eldritch feel, very ancient and powerful. I know, it sounds silly when you look at this cute little fluff ball, but that's the direction I wanted to take it in. Starting with the pose, I wanted this character to feel connected with the earth, seeing as Whimsicott is a grass type. Crouched low to the ground and literally supported by a cane of gnarled, tangled wood, this character already looks shamanistic, even without any sort of design or silhouette. Of course, the most iconic part of Whimsicott is its fluffy cotton collar, so I designed the armor around that main feature. While this cotton would remain somewhat under-designed, I gave other aspects of the armor much more textures through line work. I wanted the pieces to feel carved out of wood, decorated with subtle engravings that added a fairy element to the whole design. Because I liked how MEGANIUM's leaf kilt came out so much, I doubled down on my design and gave one to Whimsicott too. The staff was topped off with some carved crystals that I thought contributed to the fairy side of the Pokemon as well, and floating just above their extended hand, I included a little simple sprite. This palette would be simplistic, like the previous two, but I had an easy time focusing the attention of my audience in one place. With the armor being a dark brown and deep blue, the stark white of the cotton mane meant that any viewer's eye would be drawn right to the head first, and then travel around the rest of the body. My favorite method of color rendering is blocking out shapes of color with the technical pen tool, and filling them in with the fill tool. It's how I did the colors of all of these characters, but I'm aiming to diversify that method of coloring this year. It's one of my art goals for 2021. Alright, that wraps up this video. What do you guys think? Which armor was your favorite? Meganium, like I said before, was one of my favorite pieces that I did in all of 2020. Let's hope that I can top it by this time next year. Anyway, thank you for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for more content. Until the next video, peace.